think that the real question is that people are not clear on capitalism because capitalism is a very vicious system. But what it does is it embroideries its viciousness with all sorts of elusive terms. For example, many of us would support capitalism because we actually believe that in a capitalist system, there's a chance for us to get the same amount of money as Rockefeller gets because we're told that under capitalism, there is equality of opportunity. So that we feel that if this year we didn't make as much as a Rockefeller made, then we got to work a little bit harder. And next year we're going to make it. But if we carefully examine a capitalist system, you will see that it's based on exploitation because the viciousness of capitalism and the reason why once black people examined, we can never be for it is that under a capitalist system, the fruits of those who labor are enjoyed by somebody else. That is, those who do the laboring, the fruits of their labor, they don't enjoy it. As a matter of fact, we could say under capitalism that the fruits of the labor of the toiling masses are enjoyed by those who do not labor. And again, as black people, we have clear examples of it. If we were to get the fruits of our labor from slavery, just from slavery, all we got to do is go to Nixon and say, hey, look, you give us the fruits of our labor from slavery and we forget the score. We would be the richest people in the country. Again, because under capitalism, the individual exploits the labor of the people. Now, people get confused because this is a capitalist system and it's a developed system. It's a technological system. So they combine capitalism with technology and development, and they think that there is no other possible way to develop this rapid terms of development without going through the capitalist route. But certainly we have examples that show the opposite of that. China is a clear example of that. Cuba is, North Korea, North Vietnam. These countries certainly in Africa where countries have chosen the socialist path, such as Tanzania, Guinea, Congo, Brazzaville, Algeria, we see that there is another way to develop and get the same type of things that we have under the capitalist system, but in a system that does not exploit.
Hello, my friends. Hello, my family. We are back. Welcome to Revolutionary Blackout Tuesday. We have the main show that is still happening at around 4 p.m. Eastern. You will see CJ, Savvy Sabs, and JB Font will be joining later today. We got a special one here today. I want to invite two of my friends on that are really knowledgeable about geopolitical events, especially because I was covering the Lula election yesterday on the Nick and CJ show. And I always want to emphasize this, and this is the same mindset I have with anyone that's a member of the ruling class, because I was talking about why I think this is a big step forward, especially compared to Bolsonaro, bringing stuff up like the fact that Lula is a supporter of Palestinians, the fact that he's willing to call out NATO and negotiate for peace. Like, these are small things that make a very big difference. But we still, like my sister Josana would say, we should still hold these people accountable. But what we want to talk about today, I know our friend Fiorella probably has a lot of great thoughts on this. I saw Pasta, he was on The Hill as well. I saw him on Jimmy, so looking forward to hearing Fiorella's take on this. Because even though Lula won, he definitely in a tough position. It's going to be hard to get a lot of his agenda passed because Bolsonaro and a lot of his representatives have won seats in government despite Lula's victory. But we talk about that here soon. Another thing we definitely going to bring up, it is story in The Intercept. And we all got criticism of The Intercept. Misty would tell us how they treat whistleblowers, right? But they did break a story on something that we already knew, the coordination between DHS and big tech companies. Something we already knew, but it is good to have a report, right? Because it was so obvious, so out in the open. But anyway, we're going to get to these topics here very soon. I want to introduce my friends. This is RBN's preferred activist and my rant buddy.
Yes.
As soon as the activist summit was done, I definitely got to bring Misty back on here. Welcome, my friend.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun hour.
Yeah.
Always is when Misty joins us. And I also want to bring in and welcome from the Convo Couch, also does great reporting on RT, amazing independent journalist. Welcome to Revolutionary Blackout, Fiorella Isabel.
Hi, thanks for having me. Nice to be here with you both.
How's it?
My favorite Russian propagandist.
Yes, just doing Putin's dirty work.
Yeah.
It's good. It's getting cold for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet.
I want to start this conversation because I want to ask you about Lula. But since you're in Moscow, I'm just curious. Well, what are your thoughts on like the overall mood, like in conversations, but about what, based on what you see in Moscow, based on what the war, the geopolitical position. Do you have any thoughts to start the conversation? Like based on your on the ground perspective, based on what's going on in Russia, I wouldn't know. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to say. I think people have different opinions, just like in the United States. It's like some people are very supportive of the conflict. They'll be wearing the Z. They'll be, they agree with Putin. At the least, it's not even about Putin. It's about a fight for their existential existence, because they see it as, if NATO did come into, if Ukraine did become a part of NATO and there were weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons on their border, that would ultimately be the end of Russia, because they would just continue eastward. And this is like a fight for their existence. And that could be outlined in a lot of RAND documents, particularly one from 2019. Now, apart from that, there's also people who are a little bit afraid that they don't want their whole lives to be disrupted by this. But what there isn't is a hatred towards Ukrainians. I haven't seen that. There's not a hatred towards Americans either. I haven't experienced that. Nobody's like, oh, let's go kill a bunch of Ukrainians today. That's not the sentiment here. And people just want to live their life. The ruble is the strongest currency this year. I mean, the restaurants are open, the people are going out, they're doing family things. Russians complain about the cold, but they also love the cold. So it's kind of interesting. And yeah, it's really a very metropolitan city with great transportation, very clean, the cleanest city I've ever been in. I'm not exaggerating. I haven't seen this level of clean. People, again, like they're nice, they're Russian, but they're nice, and like they're just different. They have different. It's like asking how are you is really asking how are you. In Russia, they're not just telling you pleasantries. So they're really straightforward about things. And I do appreciate that, because in the United States, we get the opposite. We get a lot of like the beautiful word salad, but none of the substance. So it's been interesting being here, and I'm still learning. And I talk to, even people I work with, not everybody is a fan of the president. It's people think that everybody that works, that's just not the case. And there's people who are more right leaning and people who are super left leaning. And that's what I like, because you work at a place where you have different opinions instead of everybody regurgitating what they're told to. And yet, we're banned. I'm called a propagandist. Our Twitter labeled me this. So yeah, that's where we're at.
How's the language barrier? Because like I would love to go places like Moscow and stuff like that, but I'm always worried because I'm a dumb American that only know one language. But is it easy to get around? As I don't know how many languages you speak, but like how is the language barrier usually in Moscow?
So I don't speak any Russian. I mean, I'm learning a few words, obviously out of necessity, just to get in a cab and stuff like that. But it's the thing is, some people speak English. A lot less people than I thought, that I was told, do actually. And if they speak it, it's not like, it's not like fluently. But obviously, mostly when I'm at work, it's not a problem. Everybody speaks English, and there is this great app called Google Translate, or Yandex is actually better than Google. And Yandex is the Russian website, right? So it's the one where there was that picture where I talked about Iran. If you Google Iran on a Russian search engine called Yandex versus Google, you get two completely different results. So Yandex has its own translator app, and you can literally put a picture of the menu and it translates it from Russian to English. Like, let's say you're looking at a food menu.
That's crazy.
And so that's been our saving grace, to be honest. It can also translate audio. That's wild. That's been the toughest thing, to be honest, the language barrier. But the good thing is there's a lot of actual expats here, believe it or not. There's a lot of journalists, friends of mine here, actually. And I have like a group of people, different groups that are here, and it's nice to see them. So you don't, you're not as alone, and you're not the only dumb American here. There's a lot of Brits out here, a lot of Brits too. And their government will actually sanction some of them, or will like literally like the media there is even more vicious in certain aspects. Like they go to their families' houses, they like completely go after them, and it's crazy because in our ours does it behind our backs. Like it's not like they're not doing it. Trust me, like they're doing it. They're just not like as outright about it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I remember I was talking to Pasta when he was on here. He's like, man, you gotta get your passport, man. Get out there. And I was like, I 100% agree. I want to go to like Moscow. I would love to go to Brazil. Like just go around, talk to ordinary people about how they feel about the Brazilian election. And despite all my criticism and my loathing of my strategy a few years ago, I still don't regret my work on the Bernie campaign because I was going around talking to everyday people, talking to Black people in South Carolina. I was debunking what I hear from mainstream media. Like, hey, what's going on with you? What is your priorities? And I'm hearing a completely different narrative. So I want to do that, but international. One day we get there, and the language barrier was always intimidating. That app is wild, man. I'm a younger millennial, but I'm still like boomer minded in a lot of ways. So like that app is like if you showed me that like 15 years ago, I'm like, man, that's the future. You can translations.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess that's the modern society we live in. One more thing I want to ask on this topic before I'll get you in here, Misty.
You're fine.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Russian sentiment. This is why I would love to go on the ground, because I get my sources from a lot of different independent media like yourself. I try to get my accounts on the ground, but you really have to talk to people and see what the populace is feeling as well, if you're going to be a real citizen journalist. And I reported that Putin had approval rating around, the last number I saw around 76%. And then someone in the comments corrected me and said it's 83%. I've seen a few different numbers, but that's the last one I saw, 76. So yeah, I'm going based on what the data that is presented to me. So I'm asking you, like, how far off am I on that? Like, what do you feel like based on what you see on the ground? Like, is that 73%, like 75%, 80% number? Is that off, or does that sound realistic to you?
It's probably in the 70s, I would say. Moscow is actually, like every capital that I've visited in Latin America and everywhere, Moscow has more pro-Western people because it's the most metropolitan city, industrialized city. There's more propaganda. People have access to more technology, so they have more access to that Western propaganda. People outside of Moscow are far more pro the Russian Federation. So while while Putin obviously has support here, you saw the 60,000 people that came out in support of the referendums compared to like the 1,000 or less protesters that were like protesting against him and against the referendum and against everything, the Alex Navalny side. So you can see the difference. However, this is something I point out all the time. And I spoke to this to several people who I was interviewing on Iran and the protests there. The youth is always what is targeted by the West for regime change. So I've noticed the youth, and I'm talking about like 25 or even younger than that, 18-year-old, that sort of age bracket, they tend to be more pro-Western. They weren't born knowing how Russia was before Putin got there, because every single Russian I've spoken to, like even the ones that aren't really crazy about him now or are left of him politically, they're like, yeah, Russia was not what it is in like the mid 90s, and like Putin really did a lot for the economy. And so a lot of people respect that about him. And so the young people that were born like way later, they never saw any of that, and they didn't see the effects of the fall of the Soviet Union. So then you have like a disconnect from the older population that kind of misses the Soviet Union, but also sees like the good things that have come about, but also sees what the United States did and how this was helped by the fall was absolutely a push by outside forces, and how Gorbachev just basically let everybody in and it ruined the economy. So there's like that sentiment versus people that don't know their history. And the problem is when you have young people that aren't really learning the full picture or feel like they're being constricted by the government. And young people tend to be more liberal on LGBTQ issues and stuff. So it's just kind of like that disconnect where I think Russia needs to really know how to talk to them and how to like brief them, because I've seen it happen too many times where that is exactly what's used to push regime change. We've seen it attempts in Cuba. We see it right now in Iran. In Nicaragua, that was the only place I noticed where they taught people, the young people knew their history because they were specifically taught, and they know all about, the revolutionary history, what the United States did, the interventionism. They are extremely knowledgeable. But in places where that doesn't happen, I just have I have a worry about that. But yeah, there is an age difference in support of the Russian Federation, and there's definitely more support of that outside of the main central areas of Moscow.
I always hear these funny contradictory reports from the mainstream media where they, at one end, they try to pretend that no dissent is allowed in Russia, and then at the other end, they say, "Oh my God, there's a rare example of a government official criticizing Putin." And then they say that over and over again. They oh my God, this official criticized Putin. This official criticized Putin. Then at the same time, they'll say, "Oh, people are now allowed to criticize Putin." How true is that? How true is that? Do you, being in there, do you feel like the same pressure?
Yeah, no. I mean, I have my criticisms of Russia. I mean, I think they're way too like conservative when it comes to like the drug situation. But again, that's also been weaponized by the West against. So like I get it, and like while I'm a free speech, I like, like Misty, like I support free speech all the time, and I think the Russia has been responding with the free speech thing because they've been banned everywhere. And so they sort of started saying, hey, well, if you're going to ban us, or what are we going to do? Just let your propaganda come in. And it's because of that. It's because of the youth that's always online and on their phones. They're seeing all this stuff like, oh, look what Russia's doing, blah, blah, blah. Because you can get a VPN and see that anyway. Even if Facebook and Twitter, I think, aren't allowed here. But if you have a VPN, you can do it and nobody's coming in and stopping you. It's not like it's not like you can't say these things about Putin or any sort of criticism. What they don't want is somebody going in there to like try to overthrow the government, which the United States, I mean, let's be real, like they literally call everybody now a domestic violent extremist. And they have, like, when they do their when Maria Zaharova does her press briefings, there's different media that are asking questions. Not all of them are like RT. Like, it's just a bunch of different media that are allowed to ask questions. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. What is this about? And most of the questions are adversarial to Russia. I was just watching her briefing earlier today. So I don't think it's what it says. I do think it's more controlled in not really, but like in a way from how we view it. There's like, they do have state affiliated, like a kind of like a PBS sort of thing, but just like it's different because in the United States we have corporations. In the United States we have corporations merged with media, which are basically the merge with the government at this point. Our government is like a corporate entity. So in Russia, it's more of like, yes, you have some like media that receives like a certain amount of state funding, but it's not like it's the government, the Russian government. It's like, here's an entity and here's some media that receives some funding. It's not everybody. And I just think like they're more upfront about, what they're doing. I don't see them jailing journalists, like foreign journalists, especially like we're talking about people like Julian Assange, like the United States is doing. Edward Snowden is here in Russia for a reason as a whistleblower. So I don't, this is like, it's just ridiculous when people try to compare. This is what really gets to me. When people try to compare NATO and the United States hegemony and the empire with Russia, who has been really vilified for us as Americans since the 50s, even before that. But we grew up thinking Russians were bad in every movie and every book and every way. And I just think it's unfair.
Yes, that's what
Yeah.
Russiagate was for.
Yeah, Misty, you want to add to that before I move on? I want to
Well,
give you
yeah,
more
I mean, yeah, she's
Go ahead.
obviously making great points. It's amazing to me that people think, and I say this all the time. Listen, I'm no fan of Putin. I realize that my Twitter handle is Comrade Misty is Putin's buddy. It's a joke. Like, it's a joke. I'm not a fan of Putin. I don't like any world leaders. I think you can't reach that level of power without being kind of a psychopath, right? So I'm not a fan of Putin, but I think it's ridiculous. It's the height of ridiculousness for anybody in the United States to point their finger at Vladimir Putin on literally anything. Like, everything that Putin has done in Ukraine so far since February is like a fucking Tuesday for the United States. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, it's you really you're gonna, like, the height of hypocrisy. And then you have, people like Anthony Blinken talking about freedom of expression in Iran. Go fuck yourself, dude. Julian Assange is still sitting in Belmarsh. So the hypocrisy, the Western hypocrisy, and the just absolute American exceptionalism is disgusting. And I know Fee has said this. Everybody I've ever talked to who has worked at RT, Rachel Blevins, Lee Camp, Chris Hedges, everybody, they have been under no pressure to report on things a certain way. They've never been told what they can and cannot talk about. And if you know Fiorella, you know that her opinions have not changed one bit since she started working at RT. Her coverage has remained consistent and steady, and she has not changed any of her positions on anything. So yeah, I mean, is RT perfect? Of course not. Is Russia perfect? Of course not. But I mean, again, just the height of American hypocrisy for us to think that we have any moral superiority whatsoever to be finger wagging at anybody else ever on anything.
So you're not actually Putin's buddy?
I'm not.
Very disappointed.
Alas, I am not.
And I don't get like a sheet, right, that says, here, you can talk about this.
No.
Like, when I do my reporting, I write my own stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is just ridiculous that people think like I'm just getting like all this. And even if I report exactly what Putin says because it's information, they're like, oh, she's reporting what Putin says. I'm like, yeah, because you don't hear it otherwise. So
Yeah.
I'm literally reporting what he's saying. I'm putting his speeches up because you won't hear it. And then people are like, oh my God, thank you for putting this up because I would have never heard it. So I'm like, okay, yeah, you're welcome. Like, because it's like, I'm not doing it to push only his point of view. I'm putting it out there because you don't get his point of view at all. You don't, in the United States, in the West in general, we don't get to see any of that. We just get one-sided views. And unless you go out of your way to seek it, you don't get it.
I literally see more journalistic freedom on RT. When you look at MSNBC and CNN, they literally following the same script. You will see that they will say the same exact thing on a story as if they got the same script from the CIA or the Pentagon. Hell, I watched TYT and a few other independent enough shows that sounds literally exactly like MSNBC on the Nancy Pelosi break-in, for example. We was asking questions. We told you guys how the working class felt about this. Meanwhile, Jordan and Jenkins melting down, Kyle, they melting down like this is their good friend. Like it's like even less variety of opinions in this country than I see just based on my viewing of RT and based on knowing people like Lee Camp and Fiorella. So it's always ridiculous when people pretend that, oh, Russia, China, or any other country is more propagandized than ours. Our country is so propagandized, and I want to pass it to you guys on this thought. Like, anyone who advocates for peace is called a Putin buddy, right? That's why a lot of people think you're a Putin's buddy because they see you advocating for peace. Fiorella, I see you advocate for peace. They call you Putin puppet. I've been called a Putin puppet because we advocate for peace. Meanwhile, Lula da Silva wins the election. The entire social democrats have smeared all of us, all like Lula.
Right?
Like, look, the same. You guys called us Putin puppet for the same position that Lula has. But Misty Fiorella, you want to take that on? Like this insane psyop that advocating for peace, advocating for a ceasefire.
It's fucking crazy. So talking about peace is now Putin talking points. What? Okay, then yes, I am absolutely Putin's puppet. If advocating for peace,
you got to clip that.
Somebody will, I'm sure.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. Comrade Misty admits that she is a Putin puppet. Yeah, if talking about peace makes one a Putin puppet, then sign me up. I am a Putin puppet. If that's what it takes, then yes, because I am anti-war, and I am not. I'm anti-NATO. And I 100% think that there needs to be a conversation about peace. And instead of flooding one of the most corrupt countries on earth that has, sanctioned Nazis and their military, instead of sending them a whole shit ton of weapons and money, we should be having conversations about, diplomacy and, fixing this shit properly. But that's not why we're doing it, because as Julian Assange has said before about Afghanistan, and you can just insert Ukraine into that whole scenario, is the goal is not a successful war. The goal is an endless war. And it's because it makes money. I mean, listen, military industrial complex is raking in the dough on this thing. They've bragged about it. The CEO of Raytheon was like, oh, this is great for business. You know what I mean? Like, they're not hiding it. So yeah, it's a joke. And it's the height of hypocrisy. And, if talking about peace makes you an enemy, then you might have some really weird priorities. I'm just saying.
Advocating for peace, getting rude now at a political event. You're being rude. You're being uncivil, Misty. Fiorella, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, I like that I'm seeing that too. I like that more people are out there, and I don't care. I mean, hey, I'm not 100% on board with LaRouche, but what am I going to do? Shit on these activists because they're like, I think that's so ridiculous. And this is what I hate about that part of the left. They're just like, oh no, it's about, they go from ideology first or whatever their belief is, and disregard like the message. Yeah. They go against a messenger. They decide, oh, is this person worth listening to? Blah, blah, blah. But they don't listen to the message. And so that's why they're so easily like manipulated, because that's what the tactic that's been used the last 2 years. We're talking about you're a Trump supporter, you're this, you're that, you're a right winger. Now, if you question the election, oh, okay, you question COVID, you're also some sort of right winger. Oh, you questioned Russiagate, you were a Putin puppet back then. I was a Putin puppet back then for questioning Russiagate and so now nothing's changed. I mean, it's just official, but like labeled. But like it's just like they use the same tactic because they know it works. And it works on people who literally are so focused on fitting into this certain echo chamber that they have to put out their checklist. This is why they call us, fash fam or whatever, because we spoke to a boogaloo boy. Like, it's just ridiculous. And then they focus on blaming everybody else, finding just these discrediting the messenger instead of what is being said. And what is being said is we need peace. It's as simple as that. We need to stop nuclear war. And me saying, hey, maybe you should stop nuclear war because Russia, you crossed the red lines. You broke the Minsk Accords. How about you do the right thing and you stop? Oh, you're pushing Putin talking points. No, I'm telling you how to stop nuclear war. That's that simple.
Yeah. I don't care if you're a LaRoucheite. I don't care if you're a Trump supporter. I don't care if you're Alex Jones. If you're out there confronting politicians about their support for war, I'm for that. Do it more. More people should be doing that. And the idea that you're like trying to discredit people by guilt by association. Oh, well, you're a LaRoucheite. I don't care. I I really don't care.
I've been around the block a while. I don't get these people. I don't think they're
sorry, cattail.
Because sorry. I don't care. Like, if you are for nuclear war, I have a stronger disagreement with you than anyone else. On any other issue. I am a Marxist. I can find any disagreement I have with someone. I am to the left of most of this country by definition. So if I'm going by that, I wouldn't work with nobody. Like, we gotta have discipline, the reason why I don't believe these people are legit. The people I noticed. Maybe there's some people I missed on. I know it's the same people that was bringing up the fact that these people were LaRouche and the people who support the NATO proxy war. That shit is like a complete circle on the Venn diagram. Yeah. The same people who support the NATO proxy war, the same people who just didn't like the people who did not like the message was the people who kept bringing that shit up. I'm like, we can fight about that shit later, bro. But they use that because they were so weak on that issue. They can't bring up why he's wrong. Oh, he's a LaRouche, right? I'm like, don't give a fuck. I got KKK 10 minutes away from me. You think I'm afraid to advocate for nuclear war because this guy disagreed with me on a few other issues that is completely irrelevant on this one? But I want to ask you guys your opinion on this, because Bernie Sanders, he had enough. God. He had enough of the anti-war movement. He had enough of you guys advocating for peace. What do you guys want? We trying to fight for canceling student loans. Who cares their nuclear war? right? I want to give you guys general opinion on why it's called the NATO left. Because
fuck the NATO left. That's my opinion, Nick. Fuck the NATO left. That's my opinion.
So, and that's the point I was making earlier. And if you one of the people that's so afraid of your neighbors that you see one disagreement, you don't want to work with someone, fine. You do you, boo-boo. To me, the biggest disagreement that I could possibly find is on war and on policing. You guys work with pro-war Democrats. You guys work with fascist, pro-police Democrats. And then you guys are like, oh my God, you guys disagree on some social issues. So you guys can't organize for war. Why is Ro Khanna allowed to be friends with Bill Kristol, but we can't organize with people for anti-war efforts?
Exactly.
Ridiculous. Misty, what's your thought on the NATO left?
Well, I've been ranting about this for fucking ages. It's so stupid. These people are like infantile. It is astonishing to me that grown ass adults have this kind of mentality. And people will be like, oh, well, how come you always tear liberals down and you wouldn't work with liberals? Yes, I would. I would absolutely work with liberals if they agreed with me on literally anything. They don't. They're pro-war. They're pro-cops. They're anti-Assange. They're anti-free speech. They're pro-censorship. There's not much that I agree with liberals on, but if there were something, like if some liberals wanted to show up to
we marched with Biden voters for Medicare for all. There was people, 100% the people who had the march for Medicare for all, they voted for Biden. And and once again, this is my personal opinion, no judgment, well, kind of, but my personal opinion is I think you vote for Joe Biden and you knew what he did. That's kind of disgusting. But I will put that aside if we march for healthcare. You guys see how that's consistent?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't care if you voted for Joe Biden. I question a lot of things about you. But if you show up to a Julian Assange rally, welcome. I have no issue with you on this issue. Like, if we can find common ground, I'm all for that every single time. Because here's the thing. I'm selfish and I want to get shit done. And the way you get shit done is by working together with people who also care about that thing. And I don't care, like, if you disagree with me on abortion or if you disagree with me on gay rights or if you do, okay, that sucks. And we're going to have conversations about that. But if you're for freeing Julian Assange, or if you're anti-NATO, if you're against war, then let's work together on those things, because those things are super duper important to me. So I'll do whatever it takes. I don't care. And people get mad at me and they think that that's unreasonable. But, you know, again, I'll say it again. I think that these people are genuinely not at all concerned about actually getting anything done. I think that they just want to be able to sit in their safe space and feel smugly superior. Yeah. They like that it's a little tiny club. They don't want anybody else in their little tiny club. They think it makes them cool. They very much enjoy their echo chamber. And they're not concerned. They have no sense of urgency. They're not concerned about the things that we're trying to get accomplished. Because if they actually cared about freeing Palestine, or if they actually cared about, you know, ending war, if they actually, I mean, listen, a lot of right wingers are anti-war. I am not going to shun them on being anti-war and working together on that issue because we disagree on some other things. Like Fiorella said earlier, their little checklist. Like, I'm not going to walk around a protest with a checklist. And if you're guilty of wrongthink, then say you can't be here and kick you out. Like, that's insane. It's completely counterproductive. It's shooting yourself in your foot. And it's really childish. It is incredibly childish to have that kind of mentality. I'm not saying you have to be best buds with these people. I'm not saying you have to go out to dinner with them. You don't have to have play dates with their kids. But if somebody is, on the same board as you, on the same wavelength as you on an issue that you care about, then you should be willing to put some shit aside and get some shit done. I mean, I don't know why that's controversial.
Breaking news: Misty endorses the Red Brown Alliance on RBN.
I'm like the leader.
Red and round.
Are you kidding? I'm the leader of the Red Brown Alliance.
Apparently, if you're okay with working with your neighbors to achieve a common goal, if you got disagreements, you're apparently part of the Red Brown Alliance.
Well, let's just really quickly. Can I just say that these people? It's like they think that anybody to the right of Bernie Sanders is a literal Nazi, and
it's
that's
just
not the case. It's just
while supporting Nazis.
Yes, while supporting actual Nazis, literal black sun wearing Nazis, sending them money and weapons.
That's my favorite thing ever.
But Jesus. Like, there's a whole lot of people in between Bernie Sanders and actual Nazis. And a lot of those people agree with us on a lot of things. I'm not going to turn my nose up at them and treat them as if they're less than because they disagree with me on some things. That's Stupid.
And first of all, though, like there's way more Republicans now that are anti this war and are anti-nuclear war and are anti-sending money to literal paramilitary gun-toting Nazis than there are leftists. I mean, this isn't something I want to tell the people who hate the LaRouche folks. Why aren't you out there doing what they're doing? Why do they have to? If you don't like their politics so much, why is it up to them then to do it? Where the hell is everybody else? Where's the anti-war movement? It's completely useless. And I go back to the fact that in Latin America, these people who are, shouting, yay, Lula. You wouldn't like Lula. You wouldn't like him if he was here. He's anti-abortion. He's not there on the marijuana laws. He's got a lot of other things. Socially conservatives, just like him, Petro, is in some ways, he's a little bit more left on the drug issue because it's ruined his country. But then you go to every other country in South America, they are a lot more conservative socially. They have a lot of religious Christian faith. So they wouldn't like any of these people. Like in Nicaragua, these people are they're Marxist and they believe in socialism and they do everything economically. But when it comes to social issues on abortion, I spoke to them. They're like, no.
Or gay marriage, or
so you would consider them right wingers, like if they were in the United States. So it's ridiculous that these people make these parameters, and it's very actually pro-Western, and it's very much American exceptionalist of them because they think that only the American liberal Western way is the way, and that way, because of how they've been, is being completely just it's pushing people away. There's a lot of dissent in Europe. There's a lot of dissent here in Moscow. People are the same. They're more socially conservative. And you'll find communists here who are the same, socially conservative. And then you'll find, the liberals are the ones that are like the Alex Navalny, and they're trying to westernize Russia. And that's being rejected. So what's happened is a lot of the people, some of the views that I agree with, I'm pro-choice, I'm pro the legalization of drugs. Some of those views have been so just associated with this neoliberal regime changing politics that it's pushing people away and people are rejecting it more. So it's just having the opposite effect, and more people are being pushed to more conservative values. And who's doing is that? It's their doing. And I think that's, there's a certain design element to that. And you have to understand not everybody is going to fit your little box of being pro LGBTQ, pro choice, pro this, pro that is going to be there. And if they're not that, then that means they're not a real socialist. That's your idea of what it is to be a socialist. But everywhere else, there's different ideas. And I just think yelling at us or calling us fascists for trying to work with a Republican who's anti-war is the stupidest thing. None of this matters if we get blown up to bits tomorrow because of some psychopaths who are running the show.
Well said. Well, I always want to remind people on this topic. I love the point that you made, Misty, that because if these people will vote for Jim Crow Joe, but then they still anyone who vote Republican is immediately a fascist, right? And one thing, the same way I think voting for Jim Crow Joe is pretty disgusting. I think voting Republican is disgusting. But there's levels to this. Do you guys know? And this is why I don't demonize my neighbors. And you will never know this if you listen to the rhetoric of the NATO left, the left that want to divide the working class, where they pretend all the Republican voters are Nazis. The Republican voters are literally to the left of Joe Biden on issues like healthcare and criminal justice. Literally,
Assange.
Yeah, Julian Assange. We can go down the whole list.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick, you're a right-wing white supremacist sympathizer. You.
Yeah. Fashion adjacent.
I'm a right-wing sympathizer because I read polls, because I actually look at it. According to, and this has been shown in multiple polls, I reported on a poll that showed that people who identify as very conservative, they are more liberal on policing than people who consider themselves moderate.
Yep.
People have no idea what this Overton window is like. So when they demonizing, anyone who liked Trump, and once again, these things I strongly disagree with. Anyone who have MAGA, anyone who have red thing in their profile, but you can organize with them. You can literally use the art of persuasion with movement building. So if I form in a coalition and I'm talking to some Trump guy, and I told you guys this example when I organized with this lady in South Carolina who liked Bernie Sanders, but she was a Republican and very socially conservative. And honestly, like she liked healthcare. I still don't really know why she liked Bernie. Like when you talk to her, I went from that, like 4 weeks later, she went from saying that she's a Republican. She's like, yeah, I consider myself more economically left. She wouldn't give up like the abortion issue, but she went from saying I'm more economically conservative, I was like Bernie, to saying she more economically left. I was just talking to her about some things like, yo, some of the things you're saying don't make sense, but I was very nice. But this is the art of persuasion and movement building, where if you can form a bond in a coalition on one issue and you lead by example, and I know this because there are people on the right that'll follow me just because I bash Democrats, and then I'll see them shift left. I'll see them start. I'm not gonna say it on my name, but there was this prominent Black Republican that used to follow me on Twitter, and I used to be like, what the fuck is she following me? And I literally saw her start calling her party out more, like because I used to be like, why the fuck are you guys part of the two-party duopoly? And I saw her like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, and I literally saw her timeline. One thing, I still disagree with her on a lot of things, but I start seeing her call out Republicans more, start talking about war more. Once again, she's not all the way on the Overton window where I'm at right now, but this is the art of persuasion that you can.
Dude, I've been doing this on Assange, Nick, for years. People keep telling me it's not possible to form coalitions with. I've been doing it. You can't tell me it can't be done. I've done it. I'm doing it. Like I have, especially over the last year, I've made a very concentrated effort to reach out to people outside of my political bubble, and in particular to people on the right. And I have now built like legitimate friendships with people who are on the right. And I have built coalitions with people who are on the right, who are libertarians. I mean, and it's a very easy thing to do. I mean, if you're not a condescending prick, and you just talk to people like they're humans.
I like talking to people, so that's
you know what I mean? Like, it's just fucking. I mean, I went to a whole ass convention aimed at Republicans and libertarians to push Julian Assange stuff. And it was very easy. Yes, there's things that we disagree on. Absolutely. No question. Listen, I don't agree with myself all the time. You know what I mean? Like I'm presented with new information and then change my mind. And I'm like, oh, look, I disagree with myself from, 2 days ago. And that's okay. Like, that's fine. Like, we don't have to agree on everything. It's ridiculous to think that we're going to. So yeah, I mean, it's 100% possible. And I'm tired of people pretending like that's some like wild, crazy out cuckoo brain idea that we should, work with people that we don't agree with on all the things.
It's always funny because I swear the biggest criticism I've ever seen on me that they always go viral. They're like, "Oh my God, Nick had a conversation with Glenn Greenwald."
Right. My favorite thing is that Greenwald is mad because Bolsonaro. Are you joking? He's literally the guy who got Lula out of prison. Like, shut the fuck up, you are idiots.
It's so it was funny because Pasta was on Jimmy. And Jimmy dragged the shit-lib moron.
Yeah.
Who you guys know what I'm talking about? I was watching that. That shit was funny. You guys know what I'm talking about now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got destroyed for that shit.
That was
because that's the brain rot. And those are the people I don't take serious. We all know that they're ops. Like, no one believes these people are real and serious, right?
No.
That was funny. I enjoyed that because she was one of the people that got taken down as well. But that was people say if you dislike me because I want to have a conversation with Jackson Hinkle, if I want to have a conversation with anyone,
I'm tired of the platforming nonsense. I'm so tired of it. Like, having a conversation with somebody doesn't mean that person's belief system is then like super transposed onto me. It means I had a conversation with them. I will platform whoever the fuck I want. Okay, get over it.
If my biggest crime is that I like to talk to people, I'm guilty of charge. That's I always been that way. I'm an innately curious person. I used to share stories when I was in South Carolina. I would talk to conservatives that hated my guts, and I would talk to them like I told this story all the time. To try to spare you guys the conversation I had with that black conservative in South Carolina. I just like talking to people. I don't care if they disagree with me. It's funny to me. But anyway, Fiorella, do you want to add on, and then we get to the next topic because. Misty, we can read all day. But go ahead, Fiorella.
No, but I was just gonna say, like, we did this with the election. Pasta and I were actually at the Capitol talking to Trump supporters as to why they were there, and we got labeled as by Jordan Sheridan as helping stoke what happened at the Capitol. We got
Jesus
And
labeled
then he
fucking
as
called
like
free
Christ.
to be
right wing.
platformed. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Remember?
all these things, just because we were just asking them questions because we look at elections and we
How
don't
did
feel like our
Jordan
elections are
say that
fair.
when Jordan literally used to go down and cover MAGA rallies? Isn't that the kind
No,
of
he didn't cover
After.
MAGA rallies. How Jordan covers Trump rallies is he goes and he
I
tries to
missed
find the
something?
most ridiculous person, and then he is condescending and like tries to make fun of them to their
Yeah.
faces and tries to make them look stupid. That's what
It's
he
not like
doesn't.
a genuine
No, he doesn't. He's not. It's
conversation.
very
Yeah.
disingenuous.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I'm gonna say if he's doing that because he talking to Trump supporters, exploiting them for clicks, why is that okay? But you having a legitimate conversation with them is bad. That was
Yeah,
my
yeah,
confusion.
yeah.
But go ahead,
Yeah.
Fiorella.
No. Yeah. So we've done it. And like, it's hard. I mean, yesterday Pasta was like, oh, I went, I had this lady on who's like a hardcore like Zionist. And I was like, but it's like, he's like, but I'm like, no, good that you talked to her because you're going to find levels of agreement. Like, oh yes, they understand they're anti-NATO. We have a handful of a right-wing audience. And I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed of that at all. I'm actually happy. I've had so many people who watch be like, oh my gosh, I know you guys are on the left and I don't agree with you all the time, but I like that you're consistent and you stated the truth. That is my favorite comment of all time because I feel like that means that I'm getting somewhere. That means that the information and our consistency and transparency about what we believe in, even if you don't agree with it, is something that is worth listening to versus somebody that's just going to be in an echo chamber. You're going to have 100% lefty audience. Obviously more of our audience is left, but a lot of our audience is actually independent. And then we, like I said, we have a segment of the conservatives that watch us, and we make no apologies for it on the COVID situation too. We were talking to, they were the only people that we could talk to because nobody else was questioning it, mostly on the left. And so, of course, you're a right winger. You're just like this. What happened to you, Fiorella? You're going crazy, conspiracy theorists. And now look at all the information that's coming out. I'm sorry. Like this is how you broaden your view. You talk to all kinds of people. And if you're not doing that, I think as a commentator, as a journalist, you're really not doing your job. You need to really expand your horizons with who you talk to.
Yeah, there's nothing impressive about forming an echo chamber.
No.
Like there's nothing impressive about that. Like one of the most satisfying moments I had recently was when I went on the Hill, a very conservative outlet, and then you look at the comments, there were conservatives like, well, I never heard from this Marxist anti-imperialist perspective. There I saw some right-wing comments like, I didn't even know the left even thought like this. Like, and
yeah,
that's way more valuable than us patting each other on the back, right? Like, so.
Well, if you want, here's the thing, and this is why this has always confused me. If you want to change people's minds, you have to talk to them. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you think your ideas are good and sound and that they're the better ideas, then you have to convince people who don't already agree with you that that's true. And you can't do that if you don't talk to people. So it's very strange to me that people get pissy because I'm willing to have conversations. And listen, I'm not always going to win those conversations. They're not always going to agree with me. And sometimes, listen, I'm not perfect. There are times where I enter into those conversations genuinely trying to have like a legitimate, good faith conversation, and I lose my cool or things get heated or whatever. I'm not like, shit goes bad sometimes, but I'm never going to like shy away from those conversations. Like that's how you get shit done. If you want to win, you have to talk to people who aren't already on board with you. Like you have to bring other people onto your team. That's how you win. And it's just really strange that grown adults don't understand that.
Well said, Misty. There was, once again, we're 45 minutes in. This is what happens when Misty talks. Especially when you throw Fiorella in.
It's like three of the like biggest ranters and independent media on the same show.
Let's get to some topics because I know it's late where you at, Fiorella, so I'm gonna try to get you out here. But let's get to some topics here just real quick. I'm gonna show you guys and get your thoughts on this real quick because the topic was how much effect Lula will actually have. And in my personal opinion, I think his stances compared to Bolsonaro on very important geopolitical issues like Iran and Israel is very important. But I know I was very excited because I was waiting to do that celebration live stream for quite a long time. But I do want to bring you guys, I do want to be serious here too. I do want to bring you guys down to earth as well. I know a lot of Brazilians are realistic as well. And I will pass it to Fiorella because I explained my thoughts on this before, and you can expand on this if you want. But don't expect like even with Lula wins, immediate super left shift in Brazil. A lot of it's going to be fixing the problems of Bolsonaro. But this is just the headline. I pass it to you, Fiorella, and I get Misty in here. And this is the headline: just the serious challenges facing Lula, and a lot of themes is about even though Bolsonaro lost, because of the massive media that the Bolsonaro empire spent. I covered that yesterday. That led to his allies still doing really well. But Fiorella, do you want to explain more? And I get Misty in here if you.
Yeah.
I want to hear from your perspective.
So really quickly, so the reason why Lula is going to face difficulties is because the parliament is extremely right wing. It's actually the most right wing it's ever been. Why? Well, but what happened was that Bolsonaro's party was the most popular one. So what some people did, some of the liberals did, they switched parties and they ran under that one. So it looks more like more Bolsonaro won more seats, but really it's just a bunch of liberal centrists and yeah, it's a more right compared to Lula. People and Lula is like barely like left of center, to be honest. I mean, he's not this revolutionary, and I keep saying that because the same thing happened in Colombia with Petro. People were calling him a communist. It's like, no, he's barely like he's like a liberal left of center.
They were
Yeah,
like,
well,
communism about to go to Brazil. But anyway,
yeah, no. But that's the same thing that happens here with Biden, and Lula is no Biden. I would say he's more of what a better version of a Bernie Sanders would be, essentially. And the thing he does is domestic policy. Well, he really focuses on the workers. He did get Brazil out of the poverty index. This is a reason why he was elected twice and why people literally followed him. While they had so many people rooting for him in the streets. Bolsonaro represents the counter movement to that, the populist mentality. And he got, like you said, Nick, a lot of propaganda in there to where the taxi drivers that we were talking to were all for Bolsonaro because they thought Lula was a criminal, even though Lula has been fully acquitted of those charges. So they were still repeating that. And that was honestly their main driving point. It wasn't even the vaccine. It wasn't even all of that. That stuff was coming from the United States, right? Lula is bought by George Soros and the World Economic Forum. And I pay attention to that stuff. You guys know that. I've talked about this stuff all the time. But the thing is, you can't just put a picture of Lula with Klaus Schwab or something like that and say that that's why he has ties. If you're a politician, you're going to have a picture with everybody. There's a picture of Pasta and me and AOC. There's you're going to have a picture with all these people.
I remember they heard Jill Stein. They were like, look at Jill Stein hanging out with Putin. And they show a picture and then they ignore that their pictures like Obama, Nancy Pelosi,
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. Go ahead, Fiorella.
If you're a politician, you're going to take pictures with everybody. The thing, Lula will face challenges, and like any president that's going to take over a more neoliberal government that's really bad. I mean, that's the one thing that Brazil and the United States have in common: high inflation, poverty, homelessness everywhere. I got my phone stolen. The whole thing, like it's bad. Like so many journalists got their phone stolen, and it's just crazy because it's a very industrialized economy. Brazil is bigger than the continental United States. I don't think people understand how big it is because in the map, South America is drawn way smaller than it actually is. And it has such a large economy. It's going to take longer than his time to do it. But what I think is good and where I think people are missing the mark by not talking about this, Brazil is a BRICS country. It would be economic suicide for Lula to leave BRICS. I don't think he's going to do that. He wants to start a currency for Latin America that would literally just compete, just like, it's happening with the ruble and the yuan, that sort of thing. He's pushing for that. He's also pushing for just more of a less dependency on the United States and Europe. And of course, he's also pushing for peace between Russia and Ukraine. And this is something these people that are cheering him on are pretending he's not saying. And it's funny because I think they think the reason they're cheering for him, and this is why everybody's sus. Oh, AOC, Ilhan, Biden congratulated him. Okay, but Biden and Obama were crucial to the coup that happened and putting him in prison. So why are they shifting now? They're shifting now because they think they can bring him in to their side. The thing is, things have changed. And Brazil knows what time it is because they're making connections with everybody in Latin America. It's all happening. And I don't think they're just going to easily come in and reject a this sort of multipolar world. He has said as much. He says he wants to work with every country. And I think that's what's going to happen. Not less for ideology, but more so because it's economically going that way with China, Russia, with these new partnerships. You have ALBA, you have CELAC. These are the organizations that are pushing against imperialism by the West. They're trying to form more of equitable partnerships with each other. Now, you can criticize China or Russia all you want, but there needs to be more of an even balance where the United States doesn't run anything. And these countries that have been affected by the United States are going that route. And I do see Brazil going that route. And so that's pretty much my analysis.
You bring a good point, and this is my theory, because there's always these questions about why the neoliberal establishment is more accepting of Lula than they was before, because like you said, they play a crucial part of legitimizing Bolsonaro's illegitimate government, right? My theory, and I would love to hear what you guys think about this, I think it's because it's kind of like the Trump syndrome, where Bolsonaro was so wild on the COVID narrative. I think that what did it. Like, if it wasn't for the COVID, because COVID was so important for the establishment to push to fall in line with the neoliberal agenda, Bolsonaro was like the right wing in the United States, but even more extreme. So I think because of that, I think that was like, all right, we'd rather fight a social democrat than someone who is this unhinged and against our geopolitical COVID agenda. Once again, that's just a theory, but what do you guys think about that?
I mean, that's possible. I think really it just boils down to Lula's not really much of a threat to them. I mean, he talks a big game. He has some good rhetoric. He's really just a social democrat. He shit on Haiti. I mean, he's not, I mean, listen, is he better than Bolsonaro? Yes, there's no question. But he's, I think a lot of lefties need to like really kind of temper their enthusiasm, because he's not going to be like some saving grace or some revolutionary. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And like Fiorella has said many times, you know, countries like Brazil, they are just looking for some fucking stability. You know what I mean? There comes a point where it's like, okay, we just need to chill. And kind of try to rebuild. And so I just think that lefties have a tendency because this, and listen, I have nothing really against Lula necessarily. He's pro-Assange. He's against the war in Ukraine. He does have some great things. I just think that we need to be, and it's okay to be like, okay, cool. He's definitely better than Bolsonaro, but like, you know, just maybe take a step back and look at his actual record, look at the things that he's actually done. And, you know, just don't get too excited about. And I think that a big part of it is that a lot of people in the West don't really know anything about Brazil. And I'm no expert. I'm not pretending to be. But I think that, you know, they hear or they see this kind of persona, you know what I mean? Like Lula's been kind of lifted up as like this leftist guy. And so a lot of people who pretend to be left in the United States hold him up as like this like hero. And they don't, and it's the same thing they did with Bernie Sanders. It's like, oh, Bernie Sanders talks about healthcare. He's like this here. And they didn't even look at the fact that he's an imperialist. They didn't look at his record at all. They were just like, oh, he talks about healthcare. He's a lefty hero. And I feel like we do that a lot, or not we, but, you know, people, leftists in the West do that a lot. You know, that some people say some really nice words and that people don't bother to look at their actual records. So yeah, I think it's great. He's not Bolsonaro. That's a win. But
and
let's not
Brazilians
pretend.
know this.
Yes. They're not idiots. Like
this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I had we had Lula on. I'm sorry, Lula. We had our former Arbian Brazilian sister, who's an anarchist and significantly to the left of Lula. And like you said, she knew that.
Everybody knows it.
Give an impassionate rant like Lula is mostly harm reduction against the fascist Bolsonaro, who the indigenous activists that me and Josana interviewed and talked to, they made a very legitimate argument that it was actively committed a genocide against the indigenous people in Brazil, especially with his offensive views. Brazil already had a bad criminal justice system. Bolsonaro exploited that to the next level, where he sent these criminal hit squads that will get away with murder against.
And I think it's
mercenaries
okay.
in the Amazon.
Like it's okay to celebrate those wins. I think it's important, like for morale.
For sure.
You know what I mean? But I think we need to be realistic.
My point
who he is, what his record is, what he's actually going to be able to accomplish. Not just because he's not actually some like leftist revolutionary, but also, as Fee said, he's not going to be able to get much done. I mean, he's going to have a crazy hard time getting anything done But yes, it's a step in the right direction. It's definitely like a stepping stone, but like people just need to be more realistic about it and stop idolizing these assholes. You know what I mean? Like none of these people are your savior. It's not gonna. It's the people. It's gonna be a people's thing. It's not Lula. It's not Bernie. It's not Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, I think they want to put Bernie and Lula. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, like, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But these people don't know anything about Brazil. They don't know.
No.
Like Lula is like there were communists supporting him, but there were also centrists and liberals supporting him, and some rich people supporting him. Why? Because they literally wanted to get rid of Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro even convinced some of the elite to vote for Lula because he was just so hard to control. He was like brash. He sunk the economy, and it was noticeable. So that's why they really, that's why so many people. And I think, Nick, on your theory, maybe, I'm not opposed to it, but I also think like they feel like they can convince Lula because Lula talks to everybody. You can find a picture with Lula, with Chavez, with Maduro, with Putin, with like literally Bush. You can find a picture. He literally, that's his thing. He talks to everybody. And that's one of the things that you kind of have to do if you're going to be a politician that tries to stay, afloat. And Brazil is a conservative country. It's a country that's riddled in neoliberalism. Anybody to the left of Lula would have never survived. People have this idea of like, oh, well, Brazil deserves a real Marxist. Brazil doesn't want a real Marxist. You can't push that on people when they're not ready for it. Brazil is not Cuba. Brazil is not Nicaragua. Okay. Brazil is much closer to the politics of Peru and the politics of Colombia and more. They've been riddled by neoliberalism. And so what do I want? I want the people of Brazil to choose, and they freaking chose. And I went to see their elections. Their elections are far better than our elections. And you know what? Like if we had like their elections, I'm sure we could choose somebody better, but we don't. So this is why, the people that are saying, oh, Brazil voted out fascism. No, it's not the same thing, you guys. It really isn't. We don't have the same political structure. We definitely don't have the same election system. Stop comparing Bolsonaro to Trump. I understand why there's some parallels there. I do get it. But he makes Trump look like like nothing. Like he
neoliberal type. Yeah. Bolsonaro's nuts.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it. He's fucking nuts.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying on the stream yesterday, Fiorella. Everything that they say Trump was, Bolsonaro was that. He was like an old school 1900s fascist. And based on what Glenn Greenwald said, Bolsonaro, like he's a weak leader. And if he really got what he wanted, he already did massive amount of damage by privatizing like their giant oil sector and deregulating a lot of different businesses, a lot of economic harm. But if he really wanted to do what he wanted, would have been full-fledged feudalism, class warfare. Like there are levels. The same way Netanyahu.
Yes.
The worst of what they said about Trump, Netanyahu was, but that was Kamala Harris's friend, right? Yeah. But anyway, I want to cover this one last topic because I know we're going a little bit over here, but I want to cover this for sure. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. The information war that is being waged by the establishment right now, that has been obvious and out in the open. It's good that we have this on paper, though, now. I don't know if you guys remember, but the DHS rolled out this disinformation board earlier this year. That was probably one of the funniest things I've seen in politics in quite some time. Because when I don't know what they expected to happen. And I know the Americans are largely bootlickers and they're very obedient, but it almost like the establishment got cocky. Like
no. I talked about this. They never anticipated for that to actually work. That was meant to be a stepping stone and manufacturing consent for something like that. They knew that was going to fail, but now they have that seed planted, and they have the thought that that's a thing that needs to exist planted in the public consciousness, and that's where that's not over.
Yeah, that's interesting because my read on it, and once again, that's very valid because that's a very interesting point. I think you bring a good point, but I think they thought people were so programmed because they've been waging this disinformation campaign for quite a while with Trump, and they saw people cheering for Alex Jones being censored, seeing people cheer for racists being censored. So a lot of what you said is valid, but I do think like there's this arrogance among the ruling class where they thought that this, even though the disinformation board may get shit on, they thought it would be like acceptable maybe. And once again, your theory
No, they were testing the waters for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know that they thought it would fail as epically as it did.
Yeah.
But I think for sure that they knew it was going to fail. And it was really just kind of testing the waters and also kind of inserting that thought into the public consciousness that this is something that needs to exist. They've been doing this for a while now, doing the whole disinformation thing, and everybody's got to freak out about fake news and all that stuff, which is so funny because the biggest purveyor of disinformation is the United States government. But yeah, I think that I don't think that they thought it would fail as epically and as quickly as it did. But I think that for sure that was just like they were just kind of testing the waters and seeing how far they could push people.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. But one thing, go ahead. For
No, I was just gonna say, well, I don't know if you want to pull up the story now, but this is nothing new. Like it's just being laid out in an article form. A lot of us have been talking about this for a long time. It's this is my issue with the Intercept. This is like,
let's do the caveat.
I'm glad
the Intercept.
I'm glad this is put out in an article, but you always have to think about the counter narrative, right? Why are they putting this out now? Mm-hmm. The Intercept gets these leaks randomly. Some of these people get these leaks randomly, right? Like it's just kind of like, why aren't these leaks given to other people? It's weird. So now these leaks that are coming out, some of us have been talking about this for a while. We were called conspiracy theorists. We were called like,
and they do it now.
And now it's put out by the Intercept. Oh my God, this is news. I can't believe it. This is a story of. No, it's not. Like we've been talking about this, but okay, years. All right. Now it's acceptable for you to know about it, and this is my issue with that, because now that it's acceptable, then what don't you know now? Because there's a reason why now it's acceptable by somebody like the Intercept. The Intercept is compromised journalism. Okay, it's not. So there's a reason why this is coming out, and they're letting you know this, because I think, and that's happening a lot with anything. Like they're coming out and flat out saying, "Oh, we want to bomb this. We want targeted nuclear strikes. We want this. We want that." So there's a reason why all of this is coming out, because they think like now that you're just willing to accept it, that a lot of people are just willing to accept it. And because people aren't mobilizing, they're not doing this. Like in Brazil right now, there's parallel organizations, movements that pretty much work when the government doesn't, and they make the government do what it wants. Like that's one of the things we were able to discover. And they're pretty much right now, Bolsonaristas aren't accepting the results. So they're pretty much like going out there and saying, hey, stopping it. It's interesting because in the US, we don't do anything. There's no anti-war movement. There's no opposition. There's people like Misty and you who organize, things, and you guys do your mutual aid, or you do work for Julian Assange. But there's not like this huge coalition like we see in Europe right now. Huge, thousands and thousands of people protesting against NATO and sanctions. So that, I think, is kind of just saying, all right, this is what we're doing, and that of, because more is coming.
That's a great point, because I was going to start with the caveats on the Intercept. So I'm super glad you brought that up, because that's exactly where I want to go with this, because it's kind of shady, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before I get started, and I'm gonna show you something else that's kind of shady on this story. Misty, give us the caveats on how the Intercept.
This is my public service announcement. If you are a whistleblower, if you are somebody who is considering being a whistleblower, two things: get a lawyer and stay the entire fuck away from the Intercept. Don't go anywhere near the Intercept. Don't talk to anybody who's ever worked for the Intercept. Stay away from the Intercept. They are horrible on whistleblowers. They do not protect their sources. They are trash, absolute garbage. Fuck the Intercept. 3 technically, and then they hired a guy who burned another source. So that's not a good record. That's not a very good record.
So how does Ken Klippenstein get this source? I love the point that you bring up, Fiorella. This is a guy who pushed Russiagate, was a big mandates guy, and he's trying to cool down the water on his own story. Yeah. Why is he doing this? And I just thought this was curious.
Because he's compromised.
And we can disagree with Tim's pool tape, because this Tim Pool saying this may be the biggest story of our lives, even though we already knew it. No. It is good to have it on paper, right? And perhaps one of the most shocking revelations in U.S. history. So once again, I think we agree that he's kind of overhyping this up.
Yes.
But why is Ken throwing cold water on this story? I wrote the story, and I don't think
because he's compromised.
Anyway, I thought
he's trash. Let's be real. and Fiorella, her point on this of why is this suddenly, because again, I mean, I can speak for myself personally. I have been talking about this very thing for years and years and years. And I've been trashed for it. I've been labeled a conspiracy theorist and a right winger and a fake news loving, misinformation spreading, whatever. And this is not Temple. This is shocking. No, it's not. Anybody who's been paying any bit of attention whatsoever.
Temple was hearing this for the first time.
Yes.
He's so unserious. This is the first time he ever heard anything about this.
I'm shocked. Like, you're an idiot. Like, if you're shocked by this, where
So
are you living under a rock? Like, what?
I thought that was funny because Temple was hyping his story and he threw cold water on it as well.
Well, I don't think it's I don't again, he's just compromised. The entirety of The Intercept is compromised. Nobody should be taken seriously there. They have no credibility left whatsoever, in my opinion. You can disagree with me, that's fine, but you're wrong.
And I'm pretty sure other people have talked about it. Maybe other more independent, less known outlets have talked about it.
Gray Zone has done stories on it. I mean,
written out. Yeah. But is it good that it's on paper again? Yeah. But at the same time, like I said, I just think I agree with Misty. The Intercept is entirely compromised, and there's a reason why they're putting us now. And it's really, that's what irritates me. It's like a lot of us, got shit for talking about this and saying, oh my God, this is what's going on. And everybody was brushing it off like, oh no, they're just trying to look at disinformation to make sure to take care of. It's like, get the hell out of here. But now that the Intercept puts it out, oh my God.
So once again, the conspiracy theorists, the quote unquote tankies, once again, we were proven correct. As always, as they always late to the game. And I want to show this. This is another funny part of this story. Just showing you guys the mindset of the shit libs. And this is back to the theme of our conversation.
Oh my God.
We're going to spread our information to anyone. So imagine you cover this story, and then the only person in media that wanted to reach out to you is Tucker Carlson. MSNBC, CNN, they're not going to cover DHS critically. So then the liberals do one of the biggest douchebags on Twitter. He was like, "Oh my God, ignore everything that they're talking about. Lee Fay is on Tucker."
Clutch your pearls harder, loser. Like, what are you talking? Of course he's on Tucker. If you write a story like that, and again, I think that this is a very suspicious set of circumstances of why this is coming out now. But if you write a story and somebody wants to talk to you about it and they have a huge audience, millions of people watch the show, you go on the show and you talk about your story. That's how you spread the information. I don't care if it's Tucker Carlson. I've said it many times. If Tucker Carlson wanted to have me on to talk about Julian Assange, sign me the fuck up. I'll go right now. I don't care whose show it is. I will exploit that source and that platform to get the information out. And that's I mean, what kind of idiot do you have to be like, oh, I wrote this huge story exposing corruption between the Department of Homeland Security and big tech and how they're, silencing dissent and, censoring everybody and oh, I'm not going to Tucker Carlson. Like, what kind of idiot do you have to be? It's ridiculous. And this pearl clutching over going on Tucker Carlson is so tired. Get over yourself. I don't like Tucker Carlson. I think he's a douchebag. He's a paid propagandist. Like, he's no different than Rachel Maddow. They just are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. But he has a huge platform. And Rachel Maddow and MSNBC, I think Glenn Greenwald tweeted this out. Of course, MSNBC and CNN aren't going to talk about this story. They're not going to criticize the Biden administration. This is a huge condemnation on the Biden administration. They're not going to talk about this. They're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, here's Glenn's response. And you guys know this is the same form of tactic that we were talking about earlier, that the same people who agree with the NATO proxy war will bring up the LaRouche rights and their politics.
And they'll freak out about Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, the same way that the liberals who support the DHS working with big tech to censor you, they're going to bring up everything except that issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. That's why I see through these tactics. So this is Glenn's tweet, and I get to Fiorella, and then we get out of here. Because he broke a major story revealing it is the Biden administration, specifically the U.S. security state, which direct big tech censorship program to serve its own interest. Obviously, CNN or MSNBC wouldn't touch a story, while people like Aaron are too dumb to understand it. And that's actually been pretty nice.
I don't think he's dumb.
Calling him dumb, and I'm sure Glenn knows this. Calling him dumb is actually the nicest thing you can say about that comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr.
They don't have anything. They wouldn't have anything left to talk about or anything left to do in their lives if they didn't have this agenda to go after the right. That's it. That's their whole thing. So when they can't go after somebody and call them a fascist, a white supremacist, or whatever, without literally any sort of, substantiative discussion, then they don't have anything. So no, they're too far deep into it. So that's all they know how to do. So he's going to do it, even if it makes him sound like an idiot. And you still have these people claiming today, I think I shared something like a screenshot of like these people saying, well, I really do think that Glenn voted for Bolsonaro in the second round, even though he'll never admit it. Based on what evidence? I mean, because they have nothing else to say. That's their whole thing. Despite logical evidence to the contrary, it doesn't matter, because it's just they're being led by this like completely just emotional, no logic sort of reality that they're living in, which is alternate reality to the one we're in right now. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. You go on any show that, especially if you're trying to get your message across, and I tell people that like go on every show. And, as long as you're not compromising who you are and your values, you're good. Just because you go on Tucker Carlson doesn't mean you all of a sudden agree with everything Tucker Carlson says. And I feel like this is what these people think. And by the way, they didn't care when Nomiki Konst went on Tucker Carlson because they said she was pushing back. So whatever.
I don't, that whole thing drives me fucking mental. It's so stupid. Like, it's, again, if you go on Tucker Carlson and all of a sudden you start agreeing with Tucker Carlson and you start becoming like this racist idiot, and okay, that's one thing. But if you go on Tucker Carlson and you stick to the message, and as like Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald does, they talk about anti-war stuff, they talk about Julian Assange, they talk about the COVID bullshit, and they stick true to who they are. I don't know why anybody would have a problem with that. Again, Tucker Carlson has a huge audience. He's the most watched guy on mainstream media. You would be an absolute fool to not take advantage of that, to go and talk to people who would otherwise never hear what you're talking about. You think Tucker Carlson's audience is often exposed to leftist ideas? Of course not. So the idea that like somebody like Glenn Greenwald or Aaron Matei or Max Blumenthal or Anya Parampil or whoever can go on Tucker Carlson and expose them to that kind of messaging, that's a win. And I don't know anybody who actually wants to get things done who would have a problem with that. So this whole, it's tribalistic bullshit. It's, oh, that guy's offensive to me. I can't believe you would talk to him. And as I said earlier, talking to Tucker Carlson doesn't mean that I suddenly think like Tucker Carlson. It doesn't like transpose his belief system on me. It doesn't mean that I agree with him on everything or anything. It just means that I'm exploiting his platform to spread my message. That's all that is. And it's this mindless tribalism where, if you're outside of our team, if you're outside of the like approved team, then we can't talk to you. It's kind of deplorable. And that's just dumb. If that's your jam, if you want to hide out in your echo chamber, then do you, boo boo. But I don't have time for it. So yeah, it's just so mind-blowingly stupid that I can't even wrap my head around it anymore. I'm tired of even having the conversation. I'm no longer justifying myself to anybody. I'll talk to whoever I want to, whenever I want to.
I don't give a
stay
fuck.
mad.
Like at this point, those people are so dumb. I don't give a fuck what they think.
No.
I'm building an army to defeat them. Like we going over this stuff, so I'm gonna build my army. So my army know when they see your bullshit that you're full of shit. I'm not trying to convince these people anymore.
No.
Let's build an army, and then I see it now. I see RBN community call these people out all the time because we want our audience to be disciplined. We talk about CIA infiltration tactics all the time because the best I can do is at least let our small audience, our community, be aware of bullshit. That's the only thing I can do. So at least our homies, our people, when they see the tactics, they're gonna know. Oh, they doing the thing that RB and that Nick, that Fiorella and Misty warned us about. Yep. But anyway, it was a fun conversation. I know it's late in Moscow, so I appreciate you hanging in there with us, Fiorella. Where can they find you? Anything you want to shout out before you wrap up?
Yeah, obviously you can find me at the Convo Couch on YouTube, on Rockfin, and on Rumble now. And you can also find me on Twitter, Fiorella Isabel M. And I'm also on RT. I usually share what the reporting I do because you guys won't see it. It's blocked. So I also have a Telegram channel, Fiorella's Telly, which I can share more stuff there because it's less restricted than Twitter. But yeah, thanks for having me. Totally enjoyable conversation. And yeah, Putin says hi. So
thank you, Fiorella. I'm gonna pop you out. Thank you for joining us. Misty, where can they find you? I know someone was asking for your Twitter. I'll post it, but where can they find you, Misty?
So I used to host shows. I took a break, and I'm still taking a break, and I'm rather enjoying that break. I was just exhausted. I do.
Yeah, you did a
start
lot
working
of work, so I definitely understand.
Dude, I went so hard for so many years. I just hit a wall, and I'm just like, okay, time to slow down just a little bit, just a tiny bit. So yeah, I appear on other people's shows on a fairly regular basis. Nick has me on pretty regularly. But yeah, I'll eventually pick up my own shows at some point when I feel like it. I do still do the Action for Assange vigils, which you can find on YouTube and Rockfin and Odyssey and somewhere else. I don't know where else. So that's kind of more sporadic. Just whenever there's like news or if there's some other whistleblower news or whatever, I'm getting ready to do a show coming up about the David McBride case in Australia, because that's a huge whistleblower case. He exposed Australia's wrongdoings in Afghanistan. And he's a good friend of mine, a fantastic dude. He's just great. You guys should have him on RBN actually. But yeah, he's great.
Down for a Misty recommendation.
Yeah, he's seriously, he has the greatest voice too. Honestly, he is the best. I love David McBride. If you are not familiar with his case, please familiarize yourself with it and show him some support. They just denied his whistleblower in court. They said that he doesn't fall under the whistleblower protections. So he is now facing a jury trial, which will probably happen sometime next year. And it's bullshit. He shouldn't even be facing trial at all. Figure out find. I think he's Murdoch Cadell, I think, on Twitter. But if you just look up David McBride, you can find information on his case. We've done shows on it on Action for Assange. It's the number 4 Assange. But it's a really important case that's happening right now in Australia. And obviously, anytime there's any updates on the Assange stuff, we break that down for you. And that's kind of in a holding pattern right now. We're waiting for a decision from the High Court on whether or not the perfected grounds for appeal will be heard or not, which it's unlikely that they will be. He's a hair's breadth away from being extradited, so we'll have to pay very close attention to that. And I organize all the time. We just did another event in DC on October 8th. We had an amazing list of speakers. It was so much fun. And all of the live streams up on our YouTube channel, and then also all of the like segmented speeches. You can go and check those out. And then for the person who asked for what my Twitter handle is, it's @sarcasmstardust.
Make sure you pick up my friend.
Yeah, I'm there all the time. I tweet a lot. It's kind of like my venting mechanism. It's where I go to like bitch. Yeah, it is.
It's very therapeutic. I like literally 90% of my tweets. I literally just be I'm not even on Twitter. I'll just be either reading or I'll watch the news. Then I'll just rage tweet. I'm like, y'all see this bullshit? Anyway,
yeah,
you gotta check out Misty. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You know we gotta do this every few weeks or so. So once again, thanks for joining Misty. Also, I apologize to JB because I did stream at the same time that JB had Margaret Kimberly on. So I'm asking you guys to check out the video that JB did with Margaret Kimberly. I know I'm about to. As soon as I log off here, I'm gonna check that video out. And it's good to see though, because it sucks when we stream at the same time. But as we continue to expand and JB and Sabby does their own thing, it's hard to coordinate schedules. And sometimes we do stream at the same time. So make sure you guys check out JB interview with Margaret Kimberly. Also, RBN Live will start in around 30 to 40 minutes. I know CJ, Sabby, and maybe JB in Rome is doing the show. Already did my extra credit today. I may join RBN Live a little bit later. I'm about to go patch myself up. Appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and support the Patreon. I have it linked in our description. It allows us to grow, allows us to do all the amazing on-the-ground activism that we have planned as well. Thank you guys for watching. This is Social Cinema. Sign out. Have a good one, guys.